Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where we're in the dark because it's Friday, the 13th. But on such a day, I think it appropriate we talk about one of the coolest and frankly most interesting cult bands of all time. And when I say cult band, I don't mean that they weren't relatively well known and that they didn't have record contracts, but they never quite made it to that huge level. But the fans who know them really, really are fanatical about them and love them. And this is the band Atomic Rooster. Now, Atomic Rooster was a Hammond organ driven rock and roll band. And when I say rock and roll band, I think the best way to describe them is progressive R&B or progressive soul. In fact, one of their better compilation albums is literally called Heavy Soul. And I think that that's actually a really good way to describe them. But the entire band, with its various changing lineups, was all built around the organ and other keyboard works of Vincent Crane. Now, Vincent Crane was something of a prodigy, and he got into music in the 60s when things were really hot, playing with a band, an early sort of art rock band, you might want to call them. You might want to call them prog rock, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. You know, the one where the man lights a helmet that he's wearing on fire and talks about, I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. You know, that band. Vince Crane played on the organ in The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and someone called Carl Palmer played on the drums. The two of them made an egress and they started Atomic Rooster. After the first album, Carl went to form ELP with Keith Emerson, another great keyboard player, and Greg Lake. But the next album that Atomic Rooster came out with, Death Walks Behind You, is in many ways the quintessential album. It features on vocals John Ducan, who, throughout some shifting lineups, was generally the most consistent vocalist and a very talented guy. But it was Vincent Crane who really gave the band its unique sound. And this was in an age where there was a lot of Hammond organ in heavy rock. You had Ken Hensley and Uriah Heep, of course, John Lord and Deep Purple. You had the Vanilla Fudge, definitely built around a heavy rocking Hammond organ sound. They influenced Deep Purple in many ways, according to Deep Purple themselves. And while the organ was everywhere, no one quite played it as much in the R&B style as did Vincent Crane. Think of him as Booker T. Jones meets Keith Emerson. That sounds really weird, but if you listen to Atomic Rooster, you'll know exactly what I mean. Now, in the middle of the band's career, Chris Farlow, who had a lot of solo hits and had been in Colosseum, joined the band for the Made in England album, and he stuck with the band for the Nice and Greasy album in '73, after which the band took a huge hiatus but regrouped in 1980 and pretty much picked up where they left off. John Buchanan was back on vocals, and they really were just it's like they hadn't missed 6 years or 7 years. They were really back. And their final album came in '83, which I don't know if it was recorded on amateur equipment, but most of the pressings are pretty bad sounding, but really interesting album, something of a different vibe, but you have David Gilmour as a guest on the album. And it was pretty cool. And of course, Vincent Crane collaborated with a lot of other major artists throughout his career, not just David Gilmour, who I mentioned, but Peter Green of the original Fleetwood Mac. And he was so deeply respected by the musical community as a whole. But there was a dark side to his life, and a lot of the lyrics, Friday the 13th, Death Walks Behind You, hint at that. He suffered from bipolarism, a debilitating mental disease in his case. And he ended up in 1989 after being in and out of mental institutions. He took an intentional overdose and died in 1989. His legacy, though, is one of such unique and virtuosic playing. He even made it into the Dexy's Midnight Runners. Remember, Come On Eileen. So a diverse player, but obviously Atomic Rooster was his band. He did it his way, and he did it really well. So if you don't know Atomic Rooster, do check them out. You probably won't be disappointed. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.